Good evening, everybody. Joe Baker here with the Edit Bay, and tonight I'm going to go over 5 quick tips for smoother editing in Premiere Pro CC. It's the bane of all video editors. Hangs, freezes, crashes, or even that damn red bar at the top of your timeline. There are several things that you can do to speed things up, smooth things out, and generally prevent you from putting your fist through your monitor. Now, some of these tips will work in any NLE, and some of them are specific to Premiere Pro. So let's dive in. Alright, let's start with the type of footage you're likely to be working with. Most consumer and prosumer cameras are using the H.264 codec. And H.264 is an amazing codec. It allows us to record HD, even 4K resolutions to SD and microSD cards. But in order to fit all that data onto a medium that small in size, it employs some really intense compression. These files get so tightly wrapped that although most NLEs can now work with them natively, they can still bog down your system. You're much better off transcoding your footage to a more edit-friendly format such as ProRes or Cineform. So be aware of hard drive space. Both of these options are going to give you file sizes that are huge. I know it seems counterintuitive that a bigger file would actually be easier to work with, but these are professional grade codecs. If you had to choose only one of the tips that I'm going to give you tonight, go with this one. So if you're a member of Adobe's Creative Cloud, and you've got, especially if you've got the full version of Creative Cloud instead of just the photography version, you've got Adobe Media Encoder ready to go, if not already installed on your machine. This is an format app or a transcoding app. This allows you to change file sizes. You can even send projects from Premiere Pro or from After Effects in the Media Encoder and have it render from here. Media Encoder is GPU accelerated, so if you've got a halfway decent card on your machine, this process will actually go a little bit faster than it would getting rendered out of Premiere Pro. Another quick tip. But this is pretty straightforward. All you do is come up here to this little plus sign, add your source file, and you're just going to navigate to some footage here. Go ahead and grab something from the GH4 here. So this clip is H.264 codec. This is straight out of my camera, out of the Panasonic GH4. And all I'm going to want to do is make sure that what's written here is a codec that is going to do me some good. Now, 2 options. I'm on a PC. If you're on a Mac, the ProRes codec, Apple ProRes codec, is a professional grade codec that would be an option over here for you. Unfortunately, on the PC side, we have a read-only relationship with the ProRes codec. Meaning if you're shooting with a Blackmagic camera, that records directly to ProRes, you can import that footage, drop it on the timeline, cut it up, do whatever you want to do with it until it comes time to render it out. In which case you'd have to encode to a different format. So the next best thing for us on the PC side is the GoPro Cineform codec. Very similar in the way that it works compared to ProRes. So if I simply drag this codec over here, now I'm going to be transcoding that in a QuickTime wrapper using the GoPro Cineform YUV 10-bit codec. Now, to be clear, this is not going to promote your footage. This is not going to promote the color fidelity or anything like that. It's only going to make it easier to work with in the timeline, meaning you'll have less lag, you'll have closer to real-time playback, and in general, you'll have fewer freezes and fewer crashes. Now, at this point, you're just going to choose a place you want it to go. Go ahead and click the green arrow and you'll see some thumbnail updates down here, and it'll go quick, especially if you've got a halfway decent card on your system. All right, tip number 2 has to do with preview renders. Now this is specifically a Premiere Pro thing. I'm assuming you can do it in other apps, but this is the one that I use, so I'm going to go ahead and share this with you. If you go up to sequence settings, you can change what type of codec is used to create your preview files. And by default, it's set to an all-intra codec. So if I go up here to sequence settings, down here to video previews, it's set to an all-intra codec down here. What we're going to do is we're going to change that, especially if you've already transcoded your footage to Cineform. You can actually change this to Cineform. So we're going to come up here, to editing mode. We're going to set that to custom. Come down here, choose GoPro Cineform YUV 10-bit. Yeah, and you may be greeted with this alert screen that basically just tells you that any preview frames that have been rendered prior to changing this setting are going to be deleted. That's understandable. Go ahead and click OK. Now, anytime I render my timeline, it's going to use the same type of codec, the same type of compression, and the same type of encoding that I used when I transcoded my footage to begin with. My 4th tip would be to choose your effects wisely. We all know that things start to drastically slow down the second we start adding effects to our clips, particularly color grading and color correction effects. which is why these steps are often applied at the end of your post-production pipeline. The specific tools matter. For example, Premiere Pro's new Lumetri color panel is awesome. I love the tools in this thing. It has great tools. It's easy to use, it's intuitive, it's effective, it's powerful, it's slow. I'm sorry, I realize that Adobe is saying that it's GPU accelerated. I believe them. It's still slow compared to some of the other effects that you could add in its place. So for example, I use Red Giant's Colorista. In fact, if I come up here to my... Actually, no, on that particular clip I've got Looks, but I think I've got Colorista on most of my other effects here. Colorista is fast, and the thing with Colorista is it is GPU accelerated. It's really optimized to work with Adobe's Mercury playback engine. So it is lightning fast, and you can actually have multiple instances of Colorista on a single clip. And when it comes to features versus the Lumetri color panel, Colorista can do pretty much every single thing that this can do. It can do it better. Now, with the exception of adding LUTs, okay, you have multiple opportunities to add LUTs in Lumetri, whereas if Colorista just simply doesn't give you that, you'd have to go through Premiere to add a LUT. But Colorista also has the keyer. But instead of this sounding like a shameless advertisement for Red Giant's products, I will say that just choose your effects wisely. Take into consideration that a lot of the effects that ship with Premiere are GPU accelerated. In fact, if you hover your mouse over these 3 buttons over here, what this will do when you're searching for effects is it'll pull up only what you want to find. So for example, if I want to find 32-bit color effects, I could simply click on this. But right over here on the left, if I click on accelerated effects, it'll only show me what my GPU will speed up when I drag it onto my clips. Good to know. Tip number 3, resolution. Edit your footage at a practical resolution. So let me take a minute to just address the reality of 4K. We're not quite there yet. And I could make an hour-long tutorial where I take a huge shit on 4K. But the truth is, this is something you're going to want to consider when you start a project. Carefully consider how you'll be delivering your final render. Do you really need 4K? Are you uploading to YouTube? Are you cutting your project in a 1080p timeline? If so, you may consider working with 1080p footage to begin with. I mean, going back to tip number 1, if you acquired in 4K, you could also transcode your footage to 1080p. Yes, you will lose the ability to punch in and out and do virtual pans, but you'll still end up with files that are much easier to work with. And one could argue that by filming in 4K and editing in 1080p, you'll end up with an image that's slightly more detailed in 1080p. That is true to an extent. And the truth is, if your endgame is YouTube, YouTube's compression scheme is going to quickly destroy any added boost in detail that you get. So kind of remember that screen resolution is just one of several factors influencing image quality. You've got dynamic range, you've got the quality of the lens used during filming, lighting, color grading, and so on. So in many situations, it may be that the slight improvement you get in image quality may not be worth the headache in the edit bay. All right, and for my last quick tip, purge your cache files regularly. Premiere uses cache files to speed things up for us, but if you have an overabundance of these files, or worse, if one of them is corrupt, you could end up with freezes and crashes. You can hold down Control and Alt during launch, or you can go over here to Edit Preferences and Media, and you can just click this Clean button. So I know today we were focusing mostly on software fixes to help speed up your workflow. In an upcoming tutorial, we're going to cover hardware upgrades or even hardware configurations that will also speed up your workflow. And in that tutorial, we're going to touch more on where we want to save these files. So I hope you found these tips useful. If you did, please click the subscribe button. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the box below. I'm Joe Baker with the Edit Bay. I'll see you next time.